Competitive, aggressive, dynamic. He was a four-time NHL All-Star, Olympic gold medalist and Stanley Cup champion. He was a player who always challenged a shooter, cutting down the angle, smothering any opening in his net. He was a player who was so athletic, so dialed in, he perfected that power glide that allowed him to make miraculous cross-crease saves. A player who possessed the fire, the compete, the eye twitch. Standing at 6'1", 196 pounds, number 35, the Bulin Wall, Nikolai Khabibulin.
What a save! That may be the one! That may be the one!
Nikolai Alexandrovich Khabibulin was born on January 13, 1973 in Sverdlovsk of the Soviet Union. Growing up with future NHL superstar Alexei Yashin, Khabibulin did not start out as a goalie. In fact, it wasn't until he reached the age of 14 when he read a book about his idol, Soviet goaltender Vladislav Tretiak, did he strive to become a puck stopper. Khabibulin might have started late, but by the time he was 18, his skills improved so drastically, he earned his transfer from his hometown team to the Central Red Army team in Moscow. As any young player playing for CSKA would attest to, earning playtime would prove to be difficult for Khabibulin, but he kept on working on himself, and during his fourth and final season with the team, he was entrusted to play every single game. Khabibulin would go on to represent the Soviet Union as the starting goalie for the 1991 European Junior Championships, being named as the top goalie in the tournament. He would follow that up at the World Juniors the following year in 1992, leading his nation to the gold medal as he was again named as the top netminder. Later that year, Khabibulin was named to the Olympic team as the third goalie, and his inclusion on the roster was seen as a big win at the time due to the politics within the national team and the tendency for more experienced players to be chosen instead. The team would go on to win gold, despite Khabibulin not playing a single game, but the gold medal that should have gone to him never actually made it to him. Olympic medals were only handed out to the players, meaning coaches and general managers never received them. Russian coach Viktor Tikhonov went on to pull rank and unrightfully kept the medal for himself, and Khabibulin, having received no support from the Russian Ice Hockey Federation, would go on to boycott the national team in future tournaments. Up to that point, no Soviet goalie had ever become the starting goalie for an NHL team, so playing in the best league in the world seemed like a pipe dream. But his international performances had left a positive impression on NHL scouts, and in the 1992 NHL entry draft, Khabibulin would be selected in the 9th round, 204th overall by the Winnipeg Jets. Khabibulin would spend a couple of seasons with the Winnipeg Jets starting in 1994, as he first played in the AHL during the lockout to get used to North American ice, before becoming the backup in the big leagues later that year. The following 95-96 season saw Khabibulin fight for his place as the team's starter, and upon standing on his head for the first 15 games or so, he won the job and he would never look back. As the team relocated to become the Phoenix Coyotes in 1996, Khabibulin kept his place as the starter, as he improved year after year. The Coyotes, led by Khabibulin, would reach the playoffs in each of the first 3 seasons, being eliminated in the first round in all 3 years. It was speculated that he was simply fatigued from playing so many games, but despite the lack of postseason success, Khabibulin's performances helped stabilize the team as he gave them a chance to win on any given night. He was aggressive as he had no problem challenging the shooter, cutting down the angle to cover more of the net. He was technical, perfecting his fundamental skills and quick feet to shift his body. Being a butterfly goalie, he was a master at covering the bottom of the net as he forced the shooter to go high, and once they did, he'd swing out his glove, showcasing his lightning reflexes and superior hand-eye coordination. He read the game exceptionally well, as he was able to project passes that would go to the open man well ahead of the opponent, leading to those unbelievable saves. But perhaps most importantly, Nikolai Khabibulin played best in games that mattered most. Yeah, he had off nights like any other goalie, but when he was focused, he was completely dialed in. It was rumored he loaded up on coffee before games and during intermissions to maintain his alertness, which led to his patented eye twitch. It was known by teammates and fans that if you saw his eye twitching uncontrollably, it meant he was completely fixated on stopping that rubber, and to the dismay of his opponents, nothing was gonna get past him. In the 1999 All-Star Game, Khabibulin was chosen to play in the third period for the World All-Stars, and usually during games like these, playing defense is optional, leading to the goalies absolutely hemorrhaging goals. But Khabibulin was not having any of it. He'd go on to make save after save, all the while only conceding one goal, and it led to fans giving him the nickname, the Bulin Wall. And if you thought this was just a fluke, he would go on to one-up himself just 3 years later in the 2002 All-Star Game, shutting out the North American All-Stars in the third period he came on for, as his team came from behind to take the game. Khabibulin was finally starting to be seen as a franchise goalie, but after that very season, at age 26, he and the cash-strapped Coyotes were locked in a heated contract dispute, and the stalemate resulted in him missing essentially 2 seasons of NHL hockey. He would end up playing for the Long Beach Ice Dogs of the IHL in that first season, terrorizing the entire league as he went on to become the most valuable player. During the second year of his holdout, Khabibulin worked on some of his weaknesses, such as strength training to boost his stamina and playing deeper in the net to better react to those cross-ice passes. He'd even work on his stick handling, although he didn't find much success. Such a premier goalie in the middle of his prime holding out for so long would rarely go unnoticed, and on March 5th, 2001, it was the Tampa Bay Lightning who came calling. They would end up getting Khabibulin in a trade that fans initially thought was a hefty price to pay. He would soon prove them wrong. Khabibulin's arrival in Tampa Bay had finally put an end to their lengthy goalie search. They had tried, without success for seasons, to find someone to build their team around, but each year would result in them missing the playoffs. And although the playoffs would still elude the Lightning in his first season as the starter, finally, it wasn't the goalie that was the problem. The 02-03 season saw Khabibulin establish himself as a foundational player. The Lightning were a young team who was really still finding their way, but his confidence and competitiveness afforded his teammates to take more risks up the ice, as they knew their goalie had their backs if the play ever came back the other way. He was relied upon game in, game out as the last line of defense, and it catapulted the Lightning up the standings, ultimately winning the division as well as a playoff round, both firsts in franchise history. And this sets the stage for the season of 03-04, the season that would define Khabibulin's career. Khabibulin would have a rather average regular season, playing only 55 games and winning 28 of them. He was nowhere near the league leaders, but there was one thing the others didn't have: rest. For the first time in his career, Khabibulin was fresh heading into the playoffs. The Lightning would go on to finish as the first seed in the Eastern Conference, yet experts and fans had major doubts whether their regular season success would translate over to the playoffs. In the first round, the New York Islanders would fly out of the gates, peppering the Lightning with shot after shot. The Lightning were getting smothered shift after shift, but Khabibulin bent but didn't break as he was determined to keep them in the game. And that was the confidence the team needed as they eventually found their legs. Khabibulin wasn't just great, no. He was dominant and he was completely in control as he earned 3 shutouts in the 5 games it took to eliminate the Islanders. In the second round, Khabibulin picked up right where he left off against the Montreal Canadiens. Khabibulin would allow only 5 goals in the whole series as Tampa Bay would go on to complete the sweep. The third round series against the Philadelphia Flyers proved to be an intense battle, and Khabibulin had to be on top of his game if the Lightning were to make it out alive. The tight series went back and forth, culminating in a Game 7 victory for the Lightning. Aside from getting blown out in Game 2, Khabibulin stood on his head all series long, to send his team into the Stanley Cup Finals for the first and only time in his career. Against all odds, the Lightning had reached the finals, and their opponents were the Calgary Flames, who were having their own Cinderella run as the 6th seed in the West. Happy Bulin would continue his strong play, and to get a sense of how intense it was getting, this was Happy Bulin tracking the play. It wasn't just his eye that was twitching, his whole head was twitching as he was completely dialed in. Fast forward to Game 6 and the Flames had a 3-2 series lead, and they were looking to score late in the third to win the cup. Big scramble, and Happy Bulin would make that goal line pad save to keep the season alive and send the game to overtime. Talk about clutch, and it was Marty St. Louis who would score in double overtime to bring the series to a 7th and deciding game. Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, the Lightning were leading 2-1 with 5 minutes left in the third period. This iconic save by Happy Bulin would go on to galvanize the team to hold on for that final few minutes. And with the final poke check in the remaining few seconds that felt like an eternity, the Lightning had won the Stanley Cup for the first time in franchise history, and Happy Bulin had become the first Russian goalie to do so. In the offseason, Happy Bulin would sign a 4-year deal with the rebuilding Chicago Blackhawks, as his veteran presence was seen as a valuable asset for the young superstars of the team. Despite having 3 mediocre seasons, his 4th and final season saw him lead the young Blackhawks team to a conference finals berth in 2009. His 25-8-7 record in the regular season had fans believing that the Bulin wall was back. Happy Bulin would then sign a 4-year contract with the rebuilding Edmonton Oilers, but his best days were already behind him, and his career was winding down. It got so bad in 2010 when he received a 30-day jail sentence for driving under the influence. Yet, he was a professional, and he was always prepared to compete, as he would later return to see out his contract with the Oilers. Happy Bulin would then return to the Chicago Blackhawks, serving as the backup. But he'd last only 4 games before suffering a hip injury, which put him out of action for the rest of the year, prompting him to retire at the age of 40. Nikolai Happy Bulin will be remembered as a pioneer for Russian goaltenders. He was the first to become a starter in the NHL, and he was the first to backstop a team to the Stanley Cup. He was one of the top goalies during his prime, and it motivated young Russian goalies along the way. The picture of him and a young Vasilevsky was making the rounds on Twitter. Just like his childhood idol, Vasilevsky would backstop the Tampa Bay Lightning to not 1 but 2 Stanley Cups in 2020 and 2021. It was a shame Happy Bulin declined the invitation to join the 1998 Olympic team in Nagano, but I respect his decision. Team Russia lost 1-0 in the finals to the Czech Republic that year, and Happy Bulin should have been the start of that tournament. If only he played, perhaps he could have been the difference maker that year. The Russian and International Ice Hockey Federation actually had to step in to return the stolen gold medal to Happy Bulin, and with the problem resolved and Tikhonov no longer as head coach, Happy Bulin gladly joined the Russian team in the 2002 Olympics, backstopping the nation to the bronze medal. And this is what I admire most about Nikolai Happy Bulin. He was just a nobody early in his career, leading to his gold medal being stolen. He stuck to his guns and declined the offer to play for his nation because of that. He could have swallowed his pride, but no, that was not him. He believed he was wronged, and he didn't care if it was the mighty Viktor Tikhonov, legendary coach of Russian hockey. Happy Bulin held him responsible, and just like when you see a twitch in his eye, he was never going to concede. Thanks for watching. Bye.